thank you very much for joining us. Welcome everybody to this multi-master deliveries with Mistika Workflows session. My name is Eva and I am marketing manager here at SGO. Together with me today is also Miguel Ángel Doncel, our CEO, who will reveal the 5 easy steps you have to take if you want to automate your multi-master deliveries with Mistika Workflows. So after the initial presentation, we'll also dedicate some time for your questions. So if you have any questions during the session, please place them in the Q&A panel you find in the lower tab of Zoom window. Before we take off, just a quick tip. I suggest you to set your Zoom window to full screen for a better viewing experience. Okay, so as I mentioned, in today's session, we'll be unveiling 5 easy steps you have to take if you want to automate your multi-master deliveries with Mistika Workflows. We have prepared a dedicated landing page for that, where you'll find all the steps that we'll cover during the session described together with a free sample workflow template you can download, and where we'll also upload the recording of this session. So I'll just paste you the link after I finish the introduction. So for the ones that still don't know Mistika Workflows, Mistika Workflows is our last product to join Mistika family. It is slightly different from other Mistika technology solutions. So it facilitates media management, delivery, and transcoding related tasks. Before we go to creating the automated multi-master delivery workflow, Miguel, can you please give us an introduction to Mistika Workflows interface?
Sure, Eva. Thank you very much, and hello everybody. Thank you for sharing your time with us today. Let me pop up the software. And the user interface of Mistika Workflows is very easy to understand. This section here in the middle of the screen is the editor. The Workflows editor is the place where I will build any workflow I want to create. It's a node-based approach, so each task is represented by a node. Here in the Finder, I have all the possible tasks I can use. So the number of tasks currently available is pretty big. They are divided in 3 sections: output, tasks, and inputs. And in order to facilitate the people to find the task they want to use, there is a finder. So for example, if I'm looking for H264 or H265, I can write something here and the system will filter the nodes available using that name you are writing. So if I get, for example, this node and I put it here, I have one node now in my editor. Now I'm going to this section here. This section here is the properties window, and on this area I will see the properties of the selected node. So in this case it's a transcoding node, an H264 transcoder, and I have here all the parameters that I can define in order to define the behavior of this transcoding session, the resolution I want to use, etc., etc., etc. The parameters are obviously different depending on the node. So for example, if I select a red file, a red sequence node, the parameters in the red sequence file is different. So each node has a different properties window. And this other panel here, the help viewer, is very handy for the people starting with the software because it's an online help. You can also open and access our web page with this documentation from the help menu, is this nodes documentation. But you also have it here in the user interface. So every time I select a node, I have the description of all the properties and how to use it. So for example, if I select the H264, I have the help for this node, etc., etc., etc. So this can be very handy when I am learning the software. All the windows in the user interface are you can adjust them and make them the size that you want, or you can make them floating, for example, to be able to make it bigger, or you can put it whatever you want them to be. So you can define your own layout in the user interface. And actually, using the Windows layout menu, you can load and save your layout. So if you get used to one specific layout, you can save it in order to use it anytime you want. So More than this, there is also a validation inspector. This node is very useful because when I am creating my node, will tell me if something is not configured properly, and it will give me a hint here telling me what is missing in order to have the node correctly configured. So this color on the top of the nodes represent the status of the node. The different status are, you can see them here. So they could be disconnected, not configured, ready to do, when everything is ready to be processed, it can be processing, done, etc. So if there is any reason why the node is not ready, you will see it in the validation inspector. The render log, we will see it later. So for example, here I can see in the validator inspector, if I select the node file, it's telling me that this is the node, but I am actually not defining any input clip. So I can see the different errors that are not allowing me to process this node just yet. And we will see this during this presentation more in detail. The render log is similar to the validation inspector, but it's actually, it will give us the log of events during the render. If something goes wrong, it will tell me here, or it will also tell me if everything goes correctly, etc., etc., etc. Other than that, down here, I have the another view, the overview of the different workflows I create. And this is a kind of a spreadsheet view in which I can see all my open workflows all together in different lines with all their nodes. So it's actually a very easy way when I am dealing with a big number of workflows. It's a very easy way to, in a single look, to check if everything is ready to be processed or if any workflow is not ready and for what reason. And last but not least, the queue for rendering. When I want to launch a workflow, which is already designed, I can add it to the queue. And from there, if it is a watch folder, we will see that later, it will start automatically. Or if we can run, we want to run manually a workflow, we can do it. So these are the main sections in the user interface, Eva, and those are, we will see more about them probably during this presentation.
I really like, how the interface, it's easy to use and really intuitive. But from what you actually just, described us, it's obvious that Mistika Workflow is a very open and powerful tool and lets you do infinite things, actually. But in this masterclass, we want to focus on just one of its implementation options. So can you please start telling us how we can use Mistika Workflows to automate our deliveries?
Sure thing. Let me first get rid of this and I will build the workflow from zero. The first step will be to create a watch folder. The watch folder is this node here. And actually what it does is it listens from any folder from any directory in your drives, any mounted drives. And every time a sequence or a file lands into that directory, one workflow will be started. So in our case, I have created a small directory in my system with a few folders. And one of them is this one, my hotspot. This is an empty folder. I have nothing on it at the moment. And I want to use this as my watch folder. So I'm going to get the folder and drop it here to the watch folder. And in the parameters, you can see that now it is configured with the path I want to listen from. I have in the properties the ability to exclude, for example, some extensions. So let's suppose I don't want to process the files with tar extension, for example, or something like that. I could add a list of comma-separated extensions. I can include them, I can exclude them, and I can tell also the watcher to be recursive. So if I put a directory inside the watch folder to treat it as a directory and maintain the directories tree through the workflow, which is something very useful when you want to maintain your material very well organized. So this is the first step, to define the watch folder. The second thing will be to define the formats you want to actually generate with your contents. And in order to do that, you have a pretty big list of different formats. We have DPX, DNxHR, DNxHD, EXR, GIF, H264, JPEG 2000, JPEG. We have all the H265. We have all the standard formats that are ProRes, obviously, all the standard formats that are used in the market. So everybody, each company or each person can definitively use the format that better fits your needs. For this example, we are going to build 3 different formats because they pretty much cover the normal cases that you may have in your companies. So the first thing I'm going to do is to generate an EXR sequence. So for that, I am going to take the EXR task. This is a transcoder to EXR. And I am going to transcode whatever lands in the watch folder to EXR. To do that, the only thing I have to do is this. And let's suppose, for example, that I want to generate an H264 version of the contents as well. Let's suppose I want to send the EXR contents to the VFX department or the company that is doing the VFX things. They usually like this kind of formats because it's multi-layer and it's a very high quality format. But let's suppose you want also to send to your customer an H264 version of the content. So I can add the H264 transcoder and connect it here. And on top of that, let's suppose I want to generate a ProRes version as well. So I could come here and generate a ProRes version and do this. So when I did create these 3 of folders, I did create another folder, which is the deliverables. And this deliverable folder, which is also empty at this point, my plan is to whatever contents I am transcoding, I want to put them in this folder. So for clarity, whatever contents I am generating, they are located in a specific directory. Because the watch folder is recursive, the directories trees will be maintained. So that will help you to maintain a little bit of order into this deliverables folder. And in order to tell these transcoders to write the content in this folder, the thing that I am going to do is just get it and drop it here, drop it here, and drop it here. And you will see in the files property that actually the path for the transcoded versions is the deliverables folder I did create. And let's suppose now, just to finish with the introduction of this initial workflow, that I want to send these files to a customer. So for example, I could use an FTP node. So I could put the FTP node here, and let's suppose I want to get my H264 clip and I want to send it to my customer using FTP. So I could just put the node here, and this will be an example of a very simple workflow that will listen from this folder. We'll generate 3 different versions, one for the VFX people, one for the customer, and one ProRes version for me to have a reference in ProRes. And we'll upload the NVIDIA H264 version to an FTP server. So now that I have this ready, the only thing I have to do is add it to the queue. When I have it here, I leave it there, and anything landing from now on in this folder will be sent through all the workflow automatically. So I have finished my job. I can go to drink a beer. Well, not actually, because I cannot leave my home yet because of this pandemic. By the way, I hope everybody is having a good time these difficult days. And but actually, you can, jokes apart, you can do whatever you want and leave this system working. And every time you want to generate this workflow, the only thing you have to do is to get this folder that you have created and put inside the content. If it is a movie or if it is an image sequence, it will be, in both cases, it will be sent through the workflow. Eva.
Great. So that seemed quite easy to set up, but I would like to dig into more details, actually. So what about if I have to deliver the content in various color spaces, which is a common thing to do? Is there a way to tackle this with Mistika Workflows?
No, that's a very good point, and yes, it is possible to do it. In by default, whenever you build a workflow, the workflow will be color agnostic, so there will not be any color space changes. So things will be maintained in their original color space, whatever it is. But if for any reason you know that the footage that is coming to you is in a specific color space, and you want to do color space transformations, you can perfectly do it. There are two ways to do that. One is kind of automatic, which is that if, let's suppose that your input contents are files like, for example, red files or ARRI files or Sony files, most of the raw formats actually include metadata about the color space that the file have. So if that is the case, you don't really need to define the color space for your sequences because they have one color space assigned. But many other cases, you may be dealing with DPX sequences or with movies that may not have a reference of the color space. So for that case, we have a set color space filter. And I'm sorry, not this one, the set color space filter. And this node will help me to define what is the color space that is the incoming material is using. So in order to do what you said, Eva, and transcode changing the color space, what I will do is to send from the watch folder to the set color space. In the set color space node, I will tell the system what is the color space I want to use. So in this example, I am going to use ACCC as the gamma color space and AP1 as the gamut color space. And now all the material which is incoming, I know it is in ACIS because I know that the person sending me the material is going to send it me to in ACIS. And from here, I could go to EXR, I could go to this transcoder, and I could go to this transcoder.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now, for example, let's suppose I want the EXR sequence, I don't want to generate it in ACIS because the VFX people, chances are that they will want to work in linear color space. So I have this section, all the transcoders have a very similar aspect. They have a number of sub-menus with settings. One of them is the unicolor. The unicolor is the Mistika color science, and it will allow you to define the output color space. So in this case, let's suppose that I want, because it's EXR, let's suppose I want to do a linear color space transformation. So by doing that, the EXR sequence will be transformed into linear color space. And for example, this progress here, I could do something similar and say, this is something I'm going to see in my computer. So I may want to go to Rec 7 or 9, to Rec 7 or 9 or to sRGB or something like that. I'm going to select Rec 7 or 9, for example. And this one could maintain the input color space, or I could do a transformation to linear or whatever, or to Rec 7 or 9 as well, which is probably the best thing to do because I will send this to a customer. So by doing that, you can actually do as many color space transformations as you need during the workflow, Eva.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I saw that there are actually many options in the parameters tab of each node. Can you explain us a little bit more about that?
Sure thing. Yeah, as I said, there are several blocks, and this is the unicolor, which is the one that we said that we saw before. But actually, there are many more options. For example, in the transcoding section, you have all the parameters that you may need in order to define the behavior of the transcoding nodes, how you want to do the transcoding. This block depends on the codec. For example, in this case, for the H.264, it allows you to generate the kind of H.264 you want to generate, the GOP you want to use, but there are also some common parameters, which is, for example, imagine your input may be a very high resolution input, like 8K or something like that, and you want to scale it down. You could apply a rescaling, changing the aspect ratio to fit or feel or on an anamorphic way, and change the resolution of the output. So you may, if you are working with 8K input footage, but you want to generate an HD version of the content to send it to your customer, you can perfectly do it here. You also have the ability to define what you want to do with the audio. In this case, I am going to deal with some contents that have audio. So I'm going to tell the system, whenever you generate a movie, generate the audio inside the movie. You can also generate the audio in external files, but I'm going to select audio in movie. So this block will allow you to select how you want to do the transcoding. In the case of the ProRes node, as you can see here, is similar. I also have the ability to change the resolution, etc. But actually, when I check the codec, I have all the list of standard codecs. By the way, we use the official Apple ProRes library to generate the ProRes files in all the operating systems, Linux, Windows, and obviously Mac. So this library is the one certified by Apple. They are officially Apple ProRes files. The one, and here you can generate, if you want to generate ProRes LT or ProRes HQ, or what is the template you want to use for the generation. You also have these other groups here. This one, the lookup table, I'm not going to use it, but it actually, if you have a list of lookup tables, we spoke before about how you can get your contents and change the color space. But you may want to apply also an artistic lookup table to change the look. There are many people that have lookup tables they especially like. And if you want to apply a lookup table, you can add it to the system and select it here. And during the transcoding, it will apply the lookup table for you. You also have a virtual slate. The virtual slate will give you the possibility to add the clip name and the time code on top of the image whenever you do the render, or just the time code. So in this case, because I am going to upload it to an FTP server, I am going to generate a virtual slate with the clip name and the time code. So I'm going to select it here. And for example, in this other one, in the ProRes, I could show you the display filters. And the display filter is a very powerful tool that will allow you not only to do rescaling and changing the color space of applying LUTs, but apply any kind of compositing stack. For example, some of the default stacks that we provide will allow you to add a watermark and to add your logo or whatever image you want on top of the image. So whenever you do the transcoding, you can add your watermark to the content. So I'm going to select, for example, adding a watermark. This is the kind of parameters you can select when you are transcoding your contents to any format, Eva.
Mm-hmm. Okay, indeed, many different options to customize, the transcoding tasks to your needs. So now we have all the workflows set up. My media is falling to the watch folder, then it gets transcoded with my preferred parameters, and then it gets sent to my clients. This is all great, but is there a way of knowing that my content arrived successfully to the destination?
Yeah, we also have some nodes to do notifications. So for example, the most obvious one could be an email. Mm-hmm. If I add, for example, an email node, I can say, for example, whenever this clip is ready, send an email. And in the properties window of the email, I have the normal parameters, the login information I want to use, the password, the SMTP server I want to use, to whom I want to send the email. In this case, I'm going to send the email to myself as an example. I can also generate the body of the email. So for example, dear myself, here you have the uploaded contents and a smiley. So whenever this transcoding is done, it will send me an email notification. And I am going to, and this as simple as this, you put here your body and you can send the email. But I think at this point it's nice to mention something that shows the potential for those of you that are extremely technical savvy and like to do things complex. Well, by default, this node has here a section of code that actually allow you to do Python scripting inside the body of the mail that you are going to send. In this case, this one is by default. Well, I did change this line only. And what it does, it mentions, it puts me links to the contents that I am uploading. So actually, when I am sending the email, it is also adding to the email body the link to the online content. So the email I will receive will have the link to the actual content I am uploading. By default, you can use it as it is and it will do the job for you. But if you like to do complex things and customize up to the most technical detail your workflows, you can do it using Python. And I think this is a very interesting point as well to explain this functionality, which is new. This version is 10.1. We did upload it to the web yesterday. It's an open beta stage, and this is the next version of Mistika Workflows. These yellow arrows that on top of and on bottom of the different nodes are actually valid to change the priorities when we are processing the different nodes. So because if I, for example, have this example, whenever this node is transcode and the H.264 clip is generated, it will be sent to the FTP and an email will be sent. But actually there is no reference about in what order these two nodes will be executed. Could be this one first or this one first. And there is no connection between them. So if I want to tell the people, so please first upload it to the FTP and then send me the email, I can just get this link, connect it here, and then this section here will generate the H.264. First, we'll do the FTP, and then we'll send the email. So this is pretty much an example of a full workflow. You have the watch folder, changing the color space, you generate the 3 versions, upload one to an FTP, and send an email. So I think, honestly, it's a good time to see it working, because we are talking about how this could work. But let me show you this system in action. Let me open a couple of windows here. I have some test contents in this window here. This is my test clips folder. I have some sequences here. I also have my hotspot, which is my directory that I am listening. So anything landing here will be sent through the workflow. And I have my deliveries folder, this folder here. So the workflow is active because it is on the render queue. I did it before. So as I said before, now anything landing here will be sent through the workflow. So let me, for example, get this clip here. I'm going to copy it. Okay, and I'm going to paste it here. Now the operating system is just copying the file. It will take some time because it's a DPX sequence and it's a slow file, it's a slow drive. So it may take a minute or something to do it. I will use this time to explain a couple of important things about what is going to happen. The first thing to notice is that the system is not doing anything just yet. And that is very important because it's actually writing all the DPXs here in this folder. If I open it, you will see here that all the DPX files are appearing. But because it's a sequence, it doesn't make any sense to start the process until the sequence is completely copied. So the system is smart enough to understand that there is a sequence landing and that it has to wait until the copy process is completely finished before launching the process. And that may take a minute or that may take an hour. It depends on the amount of files, etc., etc. It doesn't matter. The system will wait and nothing will happen until this copy is finished. When the copy finishes, in this case, it will need 1.5 minutes more or less. When the copy finishes, the system will wait a period of time to check that really nothing is happening. So there is like a safety window. You can configure that window and make it as long as you want. By default, it's 5 seconds. And if during 5 seconds there is no more activity in that folder, the system understands that the sequence is completely copied and the workflow is started. And that is exactly what is going to happen. But value of 5 seconds is probably good enough for a local system. But for example, if you are downloading things from internet and you want to have time in order of a broken connection or something like that, you can decide to increase that value and make it, I don't know, half an hour if you want. So if you make it half an hour, whenever the content finishes to land the folder, the system will give half an hour of security time. And when it is sure that nothing is happening, the workflow will start. So it is about to finish. Whenever this finish, you will see that in a few seconds, the system will start processing, and you will see these different dots that start clocking to tell you the progress through the workflow. So it is, we have it now, it will wait 5 seconds, and when it starts generating the output, you will see here in the deliverables that the folder will appear. There we are. Now it is generating the EXR sequence. If I open this folder, here the EXRs are appearing. All of these things are happening automatically. I am explaining it, but I am actually doing nothing. Actually, I could be drinking a beer, as I said before. And because whenever the system finishes, I will receive an email. So the EXR sequence is ready. The H264 has been done. Now it's generating the progress, uploading to FTP, and sending the email. The whole process now is generating the progress. You can see it here, and you can also see it here. So it's done. Now the process is finished. Let me copy now a movie, because we have seen it working with image sequence, but this could happen as well with movies. So I can get this one, copy it here, copy, and same logic. It will wait few seconds, and after a few seconds, the system will start. You will see it here, and it will start generating all the contents. Is generating the EXR sequence now, then it will generate the H264, etc., etc., etc. So I'm going to get rid of this because I don't need this anymore. Okay, and let's wait a little bit for it to finish. In this case, this movie is a minute long. Is actually is one of the promotional videos we are making about this ability of workflows to do multi-master deliverables. So it will take a little bit of time because it's transcoding. The content is 1 minute, and the drive is not too fast. The drive I am using. But at the moment it's generating the EXR version. Whenever it finishes, it will generate the H264. And I want to underline at this point that the H264 version is actually GPU accelerated. Most of the codecs in the system are GPU accelerated because they share the core technology with Mistika Boutique and Mistika Ultima. We use the same algorithms to do all the encoding and decoding of images. So it is quite fast generating H264 or H265 files. You can obtain pretty high frame rates doing the transcoding. And remember that in this case, this node was not only transcoding the sequence, but was also applying a virtual slate, and it was adding on top the time code and the clip name for the sequence, which in this case, the one that is being processed is called WF campaign. So it's done. Now the node is being uploaded to the FTP server. He's doing it at the moment. Whenever this node finishes, it will send me an email. Yep, now it's sending me the email. And now it starts generating the progress version. So in order to show you that this is true, let me open my email, and I will show you the email I have received. I have actually 2 emails, the one from the previous workflow sent a few minutes ago, and the one from this workflow sent just now. So if I open this one, I have the message I wrote, dear myself, here you have the uploaded content, the smiley, and the link. So if I click here, let me mute the volume. This is, I have the clip, which has been uploaded to our FTP server with the clip name in the virtual slate and the time code on top of it. So I could be eating pizza, having fun, waiting. But the most interesting thing about this is that actually all of these things are happening automatically. I don't need to be driving the system. I can leave it open, leave it doing his job, and every time you have to do something, you have to send a content to your customer. The only thing you have to do is to put it in the watch folder, in that hot spot that you define it into your system, and that's it. Everything will happen, and the system will be transcoded. All the things that you want to do will be done. All the deliverables will be sent, and all the notifications will be sent as well.
Mm-hmm. That is great. I mean, that can definitely save some precious time. And now, just before we jump to the questions, obviously you mentioned FTP as the delivery method, but I guess there are plenty more.
Absolutely, yeah. And there are many, many more nodes in general in the application. The target for this webinar, as you said before, is to help the people to master how to do these kind of things. So we are focusing in explaining an example, and as Eva said, you have available in the landing page we have created for this an example workflow you can download with this very same example, so you can check it and play with it. But you have quite a lot of other things that you can do. For example, for the notifications, we also have the ability to send Slack messages. So if instead of sending an email, you want to send a Slack message, you could, for example, whenever the progress is ready, I could send an Slack message. And on the properties, I can define the webhook from Slack, so the application can connect to your channel, and whenever the content is created, the Slack message is sent. Or, for example, we have all the typical high-end delivery methods, like, for example, Aspera. You have the Aspera client, and the Aspera client will allow you to, instead of using FTP, you can use ASTP, the Aspera service, in order to send contents to wherever you want. Or you also have Signiant, which is a common delivery system in some broadcasters. So you can also, and as well as the FTP in the configuration node, I had the server I want to use, the user and password, and the port, the typical parameters I usually need in order to do an FTP delivery. Well, in the case of Aspera, I have the typical parameters from Aspera, the username I want to use, the password I want to use, the remote file path, the delivery server that I want to use, and the ports, etc. Or with Signiant, I have the user, the password, the agents, source and target agents. So those are the typical parameters from Signiant. You also have the ability to use other online services in order to send the contents, because maybe you don't want to physically send the content, but you want to do something with it. So you have, for example, Vimeo node. This Vimeo node will allow you to get your content and send it to your Vimeo channel. And in this case, you have the title you want to put, the description, and all the privacy parameters that you want to use into your Vimeo user. So you have the ability to make it private or public. You may give permission to see it to your contacts only, or to nobody, or to need a password, or make it unlisted, etc., etc. So you can upload to Vimeo. Or we have a Frame.io, and the Frame.io node will allow you to upload the content to the Frame.io server, in which you can put your account, and you can select the project you want to use into Frame.io. You can select the team, the project, and the directory you want to use. So there are a number of different nodes that allow you to deliver the content to many, many different places. And if that is not enough, for those of you that may have IT department with technical people, you can actually generate your own Python nodes. If you want to connect to your own private server or your own database, or you want to do very, very specific things, you can create your own Python-based nodes to implement almost any possible workflow that you want. And I want to use this time to mention something that I think is important. We are receiving from the people using workflows at the moment quite a lot of feedback suggesting things that they would like to see or connections with specific services that they would love to see in the software. This is this version, as I said, is version 10.1, which is now available as an open beta in the web, but we are more than happy to listen to your requests. And if you have ideas about specific functionalities that you miss into the software, please let us know, because for us it's very important to understand what are your priorities to develop those integrations into the software to help you to fulfill your needs with Mistika workflows, because Mistika Workflows, as you can see, is extremely powerful, extremely flexible, and it's relatively easy to add any additional functionality that you may need. So Eva, this is as you said before, is a pretty, the amount of things you can do with this is almost unlimited.